All right, everyone. Well, holy smokes, what a week it has been. I'm all casual today because summer is upon us. The House of Commons has adjourned for the summer, and a lot of people are expecting an election to come this summer. So we will likely not be back in Parliament until we have a new Parliament. But really, things ended with a bang this week. And the biggest bang was associated with the Winnipeg documents lab Wuhan scandal that we've been talking about. And I want to quickly bring people up to speed and then explain where we were this week. So here's the story. This started at my committee, at the Special Committee on Canada-China Relations, where we were asking the government questions about an incident that happened at the National Microbiology Lab in Winnipeg. This is Canada's top secret lab. What happened was scientists from this lab transferred deadly viruses to the Wuhan Institute for Virology. And subsequently, those scientists were expelled from the lab. And this raised many questions about, okay, what happened? Why were these deadly viruses sent back to China? The head of the lab had raised concerns about this transfer. There was not a materials transfer agreement in place governing the transfer. So there was a lot of things that were just weird about this transfer. The other thing is that American experts had raised concerns already about security protocols with the Wuhan Institute for Virology. They said this is a lab in China affiliated with the Chinese military where they do gain of function experiments, which are experiments where they make viruses more dangerous for experimental purposes, more transmissible, more deadly. And there wasn't proper security protocols in place at this lab. So in spite of these concerns, Canada's top secret lab transferred deadly viruses to this lab in China, and then the scientists involved in that transfer were expelled. But the government has said expelling them had nothing to do with the transfer of these viruses. There was nothing wrong with the transfer. It subsequently come out that someone from the Academy of Medical Military Sciences was involved in this, was involved at the lab in Winnipeg as well. So you have these crossovers between people involved in the Chinese military and being present in Canadian labs. Government of Canada says, no problem at all, nothing to see here. So we raised these issues at the Canada-China Committee, and this was on March the 22nd, I believe, when we first asked these questions. And it was in a hearing with Ian Stewart, who is the president of the Public Health Agency. He refused to answer basic questions. I was very upset. The line that was quoted in various media told him, answer the damn question, right? As things have evolved, I wonder if maybe he wishes he had, because despite repeated demands for these documents from the Canada-China Committee and from the House of Commons, the Public Health Agency of Canada, the Government of Canada, the Trudeau government have refused to hand over documents to explain what was happening with security and what was happening with cooperation between people from the Chinese military and Canadian top secret labs. I promised you way back in March when we started talking about this that I would fight to get to the bottom of this, and that fight continues. That fight has escalated. Because last week, the House of Commons adopted another order of the House demanding the documents and saying if the documents and saying that there had to be further consequences for the failure to provide the documents. So the order was for Ian Stewart, the president of the House, president of the Public Health Agency, to appear at the House of Commons, to be admonished by the Speaker, and to bring the documents with him. Now, this has not happened in over 100 years, but it happened on Monday. President Ian Stewart of the Public Health Agency was brought to the House of Commons. He had been ordered to show up and deliver the unredacted documents, underlining Parliament's right to access information and how important it is for Parliament to get necessary information in order to do its job. So Ian Stewart shows up empty-handed. He comes and he doesn't bring the documents. He still refuses to hand over the documents, which is a clear violation of the sacred rights of the House of Commons in the Constitution to be able to access information. But it also raises these critical questions about what in the world is in these documents that the government isn't going to hand over. What are they so desperate to hide that the government is repeatedly defying the House of Commons, defying the constitutional legal order, refusing to hand over information that Parliament has asked for? Now, to review as well, when these documents are handed over, they're not going to be released publicly right away. We've established a process by which the documents will be handed over and reviewed by the law clerk to make sure that any issues of sensitive national security are not released publicly. But the House of Commons, through its operations, its employees, wants these documents so they can review them and come to conclusions and hold the government accountable. And these things are critical because, as far as we know, there are still points of cooperation between Chinese military researchers and Canadian top secret labs. We have to get to the bottom of this. We have to push for change that protects our security and that does not involve Canadian research being taken and used by the Chinese military for their own nefarious purposes. Obviously, this is top of mind for a lot of people because of the COVID-19 pandemic. There are various theories about how the COVID-19 pandemic started, but one of them, the lab leak theory, a very credible theory, suggests that research may have been going on at the Wuhan lab, and then a virus leaked out, and that's where the pandemic came from. Now, there's no allegation that coronaviruses were transferred from Canada to Wuhan, but when there's research cooperation going on, and when we're sharing information, it raises concerns about the fact that you have a lab with a Chinese military lab where there may have been significant security problems, and yet Canada was cooperating with this lab. So big concerns there. On Monday, Ian Stewart shows up and still refuses to hand over the documents. The government is doubling down. We are desperate to hide what's in these documents, is their position. On Wednesday, the day the House of Commons adjourned, we found out, and this, I continue to think, nothing could surprise me anymore with the government. And then I am just surprised again, right? It comes out that the Liberal government is taking the Speaker of the House of Commons to court. They are taking Anthony Rota, the Speaker of the House of Commons, to court to try to seal these documents. Now, this is unprecedented at any point in history. It's truly unbelievable. Now, the Speaker was actually elected as a Liberal MP. So he was elected as a Liberal MP. And then he was elected as a Speaker. Speaker's obviously an impartial role. So in the context of being Speaker, he's impartial. And he has quite correctly ruled that the government has an obligation to hand over these documents. And now the government is suing someone who was elected as a Liberal, the Speaker of the House of Commons. They're trying to take him to court over decisions he's making in order to protect these documents. I don't even know where to start on that, but this is just important for people to appreciate. This is an attack on our constitutional order. The House of Commons is its own jurisdiction. It has critical roles within our system of government, and it has the right to request documents, period. And now the government is trying to challenge that right by refusing to hand over the documents, and now by taking the Speaker to court. Now, we just received an email. It just came in, and I want to share it with you. It came from the Speaker's office. Here's what he said. On June 21st, the Attorney General of Canada filed an application before the Federal Court of Canada to prevent the Public Health Agency of Canada from producing unredacted documents that had been requested by the House of Commons and its Special Committee on Canada-China Relations. The Attorney General takes the position that the Canada Evidence Act prevents the disclosure of the documents requested by the House and its committees. Then the Speaker goes on to say, in my ruling of June 16th, 2021, I stated unambiguously that the House of Commons' power to send for documents is not subject to statutory limitations. Bingo. As Speaker of House of Commons and guardian of its parliamentary privileges, I will oppose the Attorney General's application and take the position that the federal court has no jurisdiction to restrict the House's power to request documents. I instructed the law clerk and parliamentary counsel to act accordingly. The Attorney General has been advised of our position, and the necessary steps will be taken before the court. So, good for him. The Speaker of the House of Commons is committing to defend the prerogatives of the House of Commons. But the Attorney General, the Liberal Justice Minister, David Lametti, who should know better, is taking, on behalf of the Trudeau government, is taking the House of Commons and the Speaker to court. Now, this is an assault on the way our system, our constitution is supposed to work. It is an attack on the people's representative. It is an attack on the speaker, who is supposed to be the guardian of our of the rights and privileges of the elected House of Commons, which expresses the will of the people. So I want all of you to really reflect on how important this is, to share this video, to spread the word. The Liberals are refusing to respect the basic structure of how our democracy is supposed to work in this, that they're taking the speaker to the court. And they're doing all of this to hide documents that may reveal information about aspects of research cooperation between the government of China and Canadian labs. This is a history-shaping and defining event, and I will hope for all of your support as we keep to push this issue forward, keep it alive. Now, the Speaker is supposed to rule on another question of privilege related to this, but now the House of Commons is in summer recess, so the Speaker will come back with a ruling if Parliament comes back in the fall. Likely there'll be an election, at which point the Liberals will try to get a majority, and they will try to create a dynamic in which they no longer have to listen to the House of Commons, because they'll have a majority and they'll be able to use their majority. Right now, we have a minority parliament where opposition parties can get together and push certain things forward. But if we have a Liberal majority, it will mean further erosion of the role and rights of the House of Commons. All of these issues are important. The election will be important. Everything that comes after it will, of course, be critically important as well. I never expected a situation in Canada where you would have the Prime Minister and the government taking the Speaker of the House of Commons, someone elected from his own party, to court to prevent documents related to Canada's cooperation with the government of China from being revealed. Okay, in the midst of all this, right, in the midst of all this stuff happening with the Winnipeg documents, you have Pablo Rodriguez, the government House leader, coming out and saying, Parliament isn't working. Parliament is dysfunctional. There's so much negativity. Parliament, maybe we need an election because Parliament's becoming dysfunctional. We can't pass our bills fast enough, right? No, not at all, right? The issue here, Parliament is working. It's just the government isn't respecting Parliament. Parliament is putting ideas and proposals forward. Parliament passed a motion on the Uyghur genocide. We passed a motion calling on the government to make a decision about giving Huawei access to our security networks. We've passed motions on ethics, calling the Prime Minister or government staffers before committees, and then the government has refused to comply with those orders. We have a Parliament that's actually working fairly well. It's doing its job. You know, I don't agree with what the majority of Parliament does all the time, but you have cases of different parties, often opposition parties, working together to hold the government accountable on ethics, on foreign affairs issues, on security issues. Parliament has been doing its job. But then you have these cases where a government that got, they got well under 40% of the vote in the last election. Most Canadians did not vote for the Liberals, right? And yet you have a government that doesn't represent Canadians, that's saying we don't have to follow what the elected House of Commons says. Now, this isn't a case of Parliament not working. It's a case of the government not working, because the government won't respect the rights and role of Parliament. But the reason that Pablo Rodriguez and the Liberals are using these lines is because they are trying to justify their desire to have an early election. They want to try to have an early election, perhaps called in the middle of the summer, and they are positioning to try to make these arguments to justify that early election. And they're going to do it by saying Parliament isn't working. But don't be fooled. Parliament is working. It's just that the Liberals are refusing to listen to the will of the elected House of Commons. All right. Meanwhile, in the midst of all this going on, Liberals claiming, oh, Parliament's not working. They pass a motion on Monday night, in the middle of the night, to further expedite Bill C-10. So they have this very draconian motion, which says if it's passed, limit at report stage and at third reading stage, so 2 stages of Bill C-10, the government's internet censorship bill, will take place in total in about 2.5 hours. So between 11 p.m. on Monday night and 1:30 a.m. on Tuesday morning, Ottawa time, that was all the debate in these 2 final stages of the bill that took place to get Bill C-10 through the House of Commons. And so now Bill C-10 has passed the House of Commons. It's on to the Senate. You have severe restrictions on debate and a bill pushed through in the middle of the night that allows the government through the CRTC to control the things people are seeing online. But this bill will now go to the Senate. So we'll see if the Senate passes the bill or if the Senate doesn't pass the bill before their summer break, which starts in the middle of next week. And the good news is, if that bill doesn't get through the Senate, then there's an early election, the bill dies, and it'll be up to the next parliament to decide. So continue to be engaged and active on Bill C-10 and other liberal attacks on freedom of speech. We'll see if the bill actually passes into law or if it gets stuck in the Senate. So now we're into the parliamentary summer break. And I'm going to keep doing these updates every Friday. Even if Parliament isn't sitting, we will have, I'm sure, lots to talk about as the Liberals continue to try to position for an election, as we see, no doubt, further attacks on fundamental freedoms coming from the Liberal government, and continuing discussion about reopening, about the state of our economy. As I've talked about before, the priorities I'm hearing from my constituents in a big way right now are big concern about government debt, a desire to see support for our oil and gas sector and removing the impediments that are hurting our oil and gas sector, and then fundamental freedoms, protecting freedom of speech, protecting Parliament, protecting our democracy. We cannot take for granted the freedoms we have. They require continuing activity and activism and engagement. So I can assure you, even though it's the parliamentary recess or summer break, I will not be taking much of a break. We're going to keep our shoulder to the wheel here as we prepare for the fall, as we prepare for a possible election, and think about what comes next. So thanks for watching, everyone. Please share this video when you have the government of the day suing the speaker to try to hide documents. If there's nothing else that wakes us up, this should be it. So please share the video. Please help us wake your friends and contacts up here, and I'll keep you up to date with these weekly updates. So if you're not someone that likes my page right now, like the page so you'll receive these updates on an ongoing basis. Thanks, everyone. Have a happy Canada Day. I guess Canada Day will be in the course of this week, and I'll be back with another update in 7 days.